Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad, Tehami, an American news organization. The Intercept has published what it claims to be a diplomatic cipher of the conversation between Pakistan's envoy Asad Majid Khan and the Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs, Donald Lu, which was cited as a proof by the former PTI chairman of an alleged conspiracy of the US against his government. The US publication has mentioned an anonymous source and it stated it was not able to authenticate the document and verify its contents. Now, responding to this, during an interview, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has said that in itself, if contents of the cipher are published and are true, then if they are true, then it is a massive crime. Also, there is a response by former Interior Minister and PMLN leader Rana Sanaullah that there is nothing new in the foreign media outlets' story. The investigation needs to be held to establish the authenticity of the information or the source document. Also, we have seen a response from the US State Department. The spokesman Matthew Miller said he could not verify the authenticity of the document. He went on to say that if those comments were accurate as reported, there in no way show the US taking a position on who the leader of Pakistan ought to be. Now, this report was published when the National Assembly was dissolved, and it has raised some serious questions on the timing of the publication of this particular story in a foreign media outlet. To discuss this, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Brigadier Retired Masud Ahmad Khan, Senior Analyst. Brigadier Masud, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Also in the studio, we are honored to have been joined by Mr. Aniq Zafar, his political analyst. Mr. Aniq Zafar, thank you very much for your time also, for being with us on Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Brigadier Masud. Now, when the foreign media outlet says that it can't authenticate the content of this particular cipher, what it claims to be of the conversation between Pakistan's envoy and the US official. So doesn't that raise the question on the authenticity of this particular document itself?
Thank you very much. Certainly that has raised so many questions. And if we go in a chronological order to right from 7th March, what actually the conversation took place between the Ambassador Asad Majid and the Assistant Secretary Donald Lu. And there they discussed some issues, and at the same day, the ambassador sent the details to the MOFA. And subsequently, this was not discussed at that time, but probably it was on 27th March when the thing was disclosed in a public rally by then Prime Minister. And subsequently on 28th March, there was a meeting of cabinet, and again it was discussed at that point, and minutes were taken. And then on 31st March, that was very important, the National Security Committee meeting was held, and it was chaired by the Prime Minister. And it was the cipher was discussed at length at that time. And the conclusion was there was no conspiracy. The only thing they said, it was an interference. And then the input which was given by the military as well as the premier intelligence agency, they said there was no evidence to support a conspiracy by the United States. And they also agreed to issue a démarche in that case, and accordingly the démarche was issued. And subsequently, there was another NOC meeting when the new government took over. So again in that meeting, it was also agreed then that there was no conspiracy, and they endorsed the decision which was taken by the previous National Security Committee meeting. Right. And subsequently, the ISPR also made certain comments on this so-called cipher issue, and they rejected it, and the DG ISPR said it was basically interference. There was no conspiracy, and démarche has been issued at that time. And as far as the Ambassador Asad Majid is concerned, he also was part of the second National Security Committee meeting. He gave his point of view, the content interaction which took place with the Donald Lu. And then subsequently the meeting which was later on The important things which were revealed by then the United States State Department as well as the White House, they have been rejecting it for over a time. Several occasions they rejected it, being it baseless, and with this was no conspiracy. But recently the Intercept, which has published this story, Matthew Miller is on record now. He said he has again rejected it and terming it as a baseless allegation on as far as the conspiracy is concerned. And secondly, he said if there was a conversation between two diplomats, certainly one diplomat has conveyed his concern when we talk of the Prime Minister visiting Russia, and then he said we cannot dictate another country to change its political leader, or we can recommend somebody to take over that particular country.
So that pretty much shows that US didn't have any favorite regarding the leadership.
Certainly, exactly. This is what he has been clarified in by the Matthew Miller. There was no favorites in Pakistan. It was basically a simple democratic process which took place in the country. That was the vote of no confidence.
Right, Mr. Aniq Zafar, as Brigadier Masud has very comprehensively laid down all the events that unfolded in chronological order. So when we talk about the publication of this particular story there in the US news organization, it itself says that it can't authenticate or verify the contents of this particular diplomatic cipher. So that shows that reduces the authenticity of the report itself, isn't it so?
Let me start by saying that I am quite bored of this topic now. This is flogging a dead horse. As far as the publication of the report and the writers themselves saying that they cannot verify it, obviously no one can verify it. The problem is that most of the people are not very aware what is a cipher and how it is transmitted and how it is communicated. So the former Prime Minister's plan at that time, that was also revealed in an audio leak which was between him and his principal secretary, was to play on that naivety of the people, of his support base, naivety of his support base. The issue is that a cipher is not a letter from a foreign government. Cipher is a coded communication between the Embassy of Pakistan in US and
It's and
foreign office of Pakistan. That is a coded language. That is communicating the discussion which our ambassador had with a certain official, and the impression or the quotes which he got from there. Again, when the cipher is paraphrased here, decoded here, then it is paraphrased. It is never in the same language as the language used by the ambassador.
Right.
So by the time it reaches the reader of the communique, say the Prime Minister or the Foreign Minister, it has been paraphrased at the Foreign Office itself. Now there are multiple steps in which different people have interpreted the meeting in their own way. So that is being played on. In fact, in the diplomatic language, as Honorable Brigadier Sahab was mentioning, interference. Now, the word interference has also been played upon a lot in Pakistan's context. Interference is quite simple. Me and Brigadier Sahab are having an argument, and you try to intervene, and we will say you do not interfere, right? Now, that interference does not mean that you have come in and have come to blows with us. No, that is not the case. Similarly, between countries, when interference is used, it is in the context that you do not comment on our internal matter. That's it. That means interference. Do not interfere. So what we have been doing is that we have been trying to play up this issue unnecessarily. It has damaged our diplomatic relations. It has put a dent on the credibility of our diplomats all over the world, that there cannot be any candid discussion with them because this can be leaked. So we should, I think it's high time that we should bury this issue and move on. The nation has moved on, the country has moved on. We are trying to flog this dead horse.
Right, you talked about interference. Now, when we talk about the National Security Committee meeting, the first one, which was held on March 31st, so there was a mention of the blatant interference in the internal affairs of Pakistan. Later in the second meeting, under the chairmanship of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif that took place on April the 22nd, it endorsed the decisions taken in the earlier National Security Committee meeting. But there was no mention of conspiracy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So the interference was established in both the National Security Committee meetings.
I have given you the context of interference. What is interference in the diplomatic language?
Right.
Yeah.
But there was no mention
Of conspiracy, not at all.
conspiracy at all, which the former PTI chairman used to build a narrative. That's how.
That is what I am saying, that a narrative is being built because common man does not understand the nuances of diplomatic language and how diplomacy is conducted all over the world, how candid discussion is held between the representatives of the states. Okay, so that is why the former Prime Minister tried and decided to play up on this as a conspiracy. Conspiracy would have been established if there had been multiple exchanges, meetings between those so-called conspirators. There, for example, there had been some evidence of money being supplied to that just by. It's very interesting. When the two diplomats discussed the no confidence motion, that was on March 7th, right? The opposition parties had announced somewhere in February, around 15th or 16th February, that they are going to move a no confidence motion.
Right.
Even before that, there was a PDM was established long time back, right, for the very purpose of removing this government. And people forget that the former government did not have its own majority. Its majority was based on coalition partners. Once the coalition partners left, there was no way that government could survive. That's very, very simple. It was a democratic process, no confidence motion. It was voted upon. You could not present enough numbers. That's it.
So, Brigadier Masud, so when there was interference, there was mention during both of the national security meetings, but there was no mention of a conspiracy, an alleged conspiracy on the part of the US against the then PTI government. So what does that particularly depict? Brandishing that a copy of the Cipher in a public rally on 27th of March, does it come clearly under the ambit of misleading the general mass for some political gain?
First of all, I would like to refer to the reference which was made of interference. Some very, if we recall, then there was a GIT established under FIA, and in that GIT, the ambassador Asad Majid made some interesting and some unique remarks. He said there was no conspiracy. This is one thing. And he went to the extent of saying that there was no even interference. He said the diplomat used harsh, at time we can call it as a threatening language, but there was no conspiracy, there was no interference from United States sides. This is basically on record. So as far as, yes, it was basically, it was taken as a, basically it was built on the narrative. So it was used and subsequently during all the political gatherings, and that our government is being removed, or subsequently when it was removed but through vote of no confidence, so the blame was put on the United States and etc. So that was used for the political mileage basically.
So there was a well thought out plan to mislead the general mass.
Oh, certainly, yes. Basically, when there was no data available, there was no information. Basically, it was just a concept, and this was a narrative, a story, which was said that the government was removed on the instructions of United States, and such and such agency, or they were instrumental in removing the government. On ground, what we have seen, it was basically a democratic move of through coalition power, the opposition, and they basically went for the vote of no confidence, and subsequently the government was removed.
That makes us understand using this particular thing in a public rally to create a narrative among the general masses at the cost of the national interest or at the cost of the bilateral relationship between Pakistan and the US.
Yes, but that is very important thing, as you are saying, at the cost of the, at the same time national interest, at the same time then the relation between the two countries. Basically, this has brought embarrassing situation for the government of Pakistan, because now the so-called cipher that has been probably leaked from this site and published by an American online news site, the Intercept. So that has brought some embarrassing situations for the government here in Pakistan, but the other side, they were trying to, at the same time, maligning the armed forces, and because they're telling the nation they're instrumental in getting them out of the power.
So Mr. Aniq, Zafar, later on we saw that the narrative that was initially built by former PTI chairman, he retracted from that one also, and he, on November the 22nd, he said that the US wasn't involved in ousting his government from power. So that was clearly taking a huge U-turn from his earlier narrative.
Well, Mr. Khan is known for shifting his stances, and he shifts his stances every few weeks to suit his political agenda of that time. This whole narrative started with US because at that time he did not want to take on the then military chief in Pakistan, because he was still hopeful that he could somehow convince him to support him, to convince him to interfere and somehow stop the no confidence motion. And once he saw that that did not work out, and no confidence motion, he tried to scuttle the no confidence motion through different unconstitutional means, but that was not successful. After that, after a few months of that, when he realized that his plan to drag the armed forces into the political arena and support him to return to power was not working, he turned on the then army chief, that he was the real conspirator, right? And then he also started taking other names as well, that such and such person met such and such person, and such person were hired to do that, and so on and on. He has been talking about different names. I won't like to take names, but he has taken at least 3 or 4 names to actually spin a theory around his narrative that this is how it happened. But to begin with, it is very clear that there was no outside conspiracy. It is very clear that the only thing that had happened was that the forces or the factors which were supporting him to sustain his in power had stopped supporting him to sustain in power, and he himself had no skill of politics, governance and coalition management. The moment those who were managing the coalition on his behalf stopped that, the coalition fell apart. That is the simple story. But because people don't like simple stories, they want conspiracies to hear, because conspiracies are much more exciting. Conspiracies are full of drama. So the former Prime Minister is very good at that, creating a drama, creating a conspiracy theory, and he has done it all his political life.
Right, Brigadier Masud, now ideally what should have been the behavior and the attitude of a person of stature of being a prime minister, that if there was actually no foreign conspiracy against his government, what should have been done by him rather than what he did by building a false narrative regarding an alleged conspiracy?
Simply, the then government should have gone for a clear-cut investigation into an inquiry into it, and involving all the stakeholders. And surprisingly, if you see in both the National Security Committee meetings, the premier intelligence agencies input was they don't have any evidence pertaining to conspiracy in this cipher. So the same was conveyed by the army as well. But during the first meeting, which was concluded on 31st March, when the press release was issued, but there was no mention of the points which were raised by the army. Okay, there is no evidence of a conspiracy, and this was only interference at some level. So basically, then it was subsequently used for political gains, and accordingly a narrative was built. So whatever is the case, probably at one time one has to go into details how this issue of Cipher was blown out of proportion, and a hype was created across the country, and certain impression was given, and we were all our legal government was basically we were removed through unfair means.
Right, Brigadier Masud, how do you see the timing of the publication of this particular report, and especially in a foreign media outlet?
Certainly, basically the things which are developing inside Pakistan, as we have seen the situation along the borders, and then the cases are in the courts, so different things are coming up. So it can be a pressurizing tactics, the things going in that direction, that basically the impression which I have seen now in the media is being built that the cipher was a fact, and it was basically the government was removed by the United States help by some within the Pakistan system, those who were responsible. So that was the basically aim, and that is basically again trying to get political mileage at this time when everything is basically discussed here in Pakistan as well as across the globe.
Even if they are, by their own understanding, even if they are able to build such sort of a pressure, especially after the former PTI chairman was imprisoned and was convicted in the Toshakhana case, do you think this particular effort would give them any sort of a fruit?
Not at all, not at all. Basically, it has been discussed for the last 1 year. There was hardly anything, there was no outcome. But the only thing is that now this has come up, the story has been published. So if it case, as per the intercept, they claim it was provided to them by an army person. So there is a serious allegation. It is very, very serious allegation. It means they are trying to divide the army. They are trying to create a division, a rift, misunderstanding within the ranks by claiming that army person was so. So it is humanly not possible. I cannot digest it, because at this level, a paper of a cipher of classification of secret, of top secret, the access can be given to only 2 to 3 persons. Not everybody can access to that paper. So in Pakistan army, even unclassified information cannot be shared with a person who is not authorized to receive it. In the past, we have seen very senior officers, they were punished severely, and it was probably a couple of years back, for violating Official Secret Act. So in army, there is no compromise as far as the discipline is concerned, Official Secret Act is concerned, because in army, we on monthly basis, we basically sign and certify, I have read Official Secret Act and I am going to abide by the Act rules.
Right, Mr. Aniq, Zafar, the timing of this publication of the report, especially in a foreign media outlet, that happens to be significant. As Brigadier Masud has said, it could be another pressure tactic. Do you think it could work, especially after the conviction of the former PTI chairman in Toshakhana?
Well, yes. I think what necessitated the publishing of this story was that after his arrest, perhaps his party and his sympathizers internationally amongst Pakistanis or non-Pakistanis hoped that there would be some international sort of concern, because normally when democratic leaders are convicted in different countries, countries like US and Europe and members of the European Union express concerns and all that. But interestingly, there was nothing like that happening, and US state spokesperson, when asked, termed it as an internal matter of Pakistan. So I think someone thought that let's play the wild card and leak this document if it is authentic, because I am not going to discuss its authenticity, because I will then be given some credence to this story, and I will not like to give credence to this story. We are discussing it. It is unfortunate because it has become a media issue, a media spectacle. Otherwise, I would just ignore this.
Right now, as Brigadier Masud has also mentioned, this report also contains, when it mentions the Pakistan, an anonymous source in the Pakistan military. So that attempt seems to be clearly at creating a division within the Pakistan Armed Forces, isn't it?
Yeah,
Isn't
that has been the downfall of the former Prime Minister and his party, that they have thought in their innocence or in their over cleverness that they can achieve their political objectives by creating a rift within the armed forces. And obviously the whole May 9 was also planned according to that mindset, that somehow if we create such a spectacle, then there will be a division and then it will benefit us. Again, they have played a card to create doubts about the army system, as Brigadier Sahab rightly pointed out, that this document could not have been seen by more than 3 to 4 persons in the Pakistan Army, right? And those 3 or 4 persons, they will never think of leaking it to anyone, right? It's not it is not something which will be lying with a lieutenant or a captain rank officer, or even a brigadier rank officer, right? So there is no question that anyone at that level would have a contact with a foreign correspondent, and it will not be reported in the army system. This is not possible at all, that anyone at that level will contact a foreign correspondent, and it will not be in the knowledge of the intelligence agencies, or that person himself would be so careless to engage with the foreign correspondent and share such a document. This is not possible.
So Brigadier Masud, in this sort of a scenario, as you already mentioned, there is a huge allegation. It's an attempt clearly to create a division within the armed forces of Pakistan. How the armed forces of Pakistan can bring the concerned media outlet to justice? Is there any mechanism it would follow? Because if such a serious allegation is being made, there must be a strategy that could be followed in order to bring the concerned media outlet to justice.
Certainly it will be the government of Pakistan. The army will act through government of Pakistan, and most probably the MOFA, and of course our ambassador at Washington, and he can discuss the issue with and certainly at army level, the army will raise the issue with CENTCOM and order those responsible who are basically in touch with the Pakistan Army. They come and frequently they discuss issues relating mutual interest. I would like to add one thing here. When we talk of whenever United States is referred for plotting to overthrow a government in overseas, so then the plan is made at top secret level. So it is not discussed at lower level, at assistant secretary level, etc. So only 3 to 4 individuals at that time, they will be in picture. So modalities will be discussed, and subsequently it will be launched without knowledge of the lower class. So how come Donald Lu was aware of some plot which was being hashed by the American administration, and subsequently he conveys the same to our ambassador. And if we don't like your prime minister, so tell him you remove him. So it is humanly not possible. So things are if we see them from that scope, from that angle, these are the top secret things. It's humanly not possible. They are discussed at lower level, at that too of Assistant Secretary of State level.
Right. Mr. Aniq, what's your understanding how this particular matter should be pursued with the US authorities, especially when their news organization publishes a story at the same time stating that it can't authenticate or verify the contents, and which is quoting the military anonymous source. So there should be a mechanism. How do you think the authorities in Pakistan should be pursuing this matter up with the authorities in the US?
Frankly, I don't think that any system exists within US where you can take such publications to the court, because the defamation laws are normally for individuals. If an individual had been named, then that individual could have pursued the matter. And then the publication has very smartly also added that it cannot verify or authenticate the document. So it has sort of added a line where it can easily walk away even if it is taken to the court by saying that we have already said that we cannot authenticate it. So coming back to your original point, that because they have said that, that is why I think discussing it is a waste of time. And I'm very honest in my opinion that discussing this issue further, keep discussing it, is of no use. This has no impact on Pakistan's politics. This will not have any impact in the future. The country, the situation, the politics has moved on, and even Pakistan-US relationship has moved on from this issue. So why keep it alive?
Mr. Aniq, Zafar, you have a point over here that if they themselves say that they can't authenticate, we shouldn't be discussing it. But nevertheless, it has been published.
Yeah.
Right. So when we talk about it mentioning a source from within the military, what, as you both are agreeing on this point, that it is a sinister sort of a design in order to create a division within the armed forces. Now, when we talk about such type of documents being handled only with the top brass, including the Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, and the Chief of Army Staff. Now, okay, when we talk about this particular media organization, at the end of the day, they got hold of something that was leaked to them, which they are quoting within the military circles, right? Which both of you, of course, don't agree with. So the question arises over here, where did they get hold of this document?
Okay, there is only one person who has publicly claimed that he had a copy and he lost it. Okay.
The Federal Cabinet meeting also said that there was a copy of the cipher missing from the Prime Minister's house.
Office.
Which should
yeah.
be
And the former Prime Minister has admitted it on TV, in a TV program, and that he had a copy and he has lost it, right? So let's start investigating him then. That is where I'll start investigating. Why not? Because no other individual has ever claimed that he had a copy of the cipher. Number one, why would you make a copy of the cipher, right? Why would you make a copy of the cipher, and why would you handle it so irresponsibly that it is lost? There is a system of handling all these documents in the government, in the military, everywhere. There is a process of handing over, taking over. It is simply not possible to lose it. Simply not possible to lose. In the government system, we joke that if you even as a common man, if you write a letter to someone in the government, and once it has a diary number has been issued, the letter cannot be lost. It will be lying somewhere in the government records. It cannot be lost.
Later on, he went on to say that Cipher was not missing as its original copy is in the Foreign Office, safe and sound. The former PTI chairman said that later on.
So again, the question is that if, number one, I have observations why the copies were made. Okay. Normally, such a document will only be handed over person to person and returned. It is not transmitted through normal which in government organizations called dark method. It is not normal dark. It's not normal post which is handling it. There are procedures, and that file has to return.
Right.
So if it is if a copy was made, that was a mistake, and if it was lost, there is one person who has admitted it. Let's investigate.
We'll come back to this point to take your detailed view regarding this. We are joined by another participant in the show on the phone line, Mr. Azaz Syed, senior journalist. Mr. Azaz Syed, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News Tonight. Really appreciate that. Now, the publication of this story regarding the diplomatic cipher, the conversation between Pakistan's envoy and the US official, which was cited as a proof of an alleged US conspiracy against the previous PTI government. First of all, when the media organization itself says that it can't authenticate the content or can't verify it, doesn't that necessarily completely reduce the authenticity of the report itself? What's your understanding of that?
Well, as a reporter, I would say that there are some basic principles of any report whenever we file any report. The basic rule is having the version of the people or the institutions about whom we are running the story. The story is lacking the version. So, in terms of a story, I think so it lacks basic principle. Second most important thing is this, that the reporters, both the reporters, they are trying to defend Pakistan Tehrik-e-Insaf and Imran Khan. At the same time, we see that they have a link. Mr. Ryan, who's the reporter of this story, on 8th of June 2023, he had interviewed Mr. Imran Khan, and we've seen that he has a direct link. And we also know that the copy of this cipher was missing, and Imran Khan admits that he got that copy and the copy got missing. So at the same time, we also see that FIA is doing an inquiry into the matter of missing copy of the cipher. So link is, if you talk about the circumstantial evidence, the link is there.
So you mean to say that we can trace back this particular leak of the cipher to a foreign media organization back to where it went missing from?
Yes, of course. This shows. You know, if you see the statement of Mr. Azam Khan, that also tells that he says that he had presented the copy of the cipher on 9th March to the Prime Minister, and Prime Minister kept that copy. And if you see the statement of Mr. Syed Mahmood, who was the then Secretary of Foreign Affairs, he had stated that Azam Khan had approached them that he had missed the copy, misplaced the copy, and he needed another copy. So these all things are interconnected. So it is also going to adversely affect Mr. Imran Khan, and it would be proving that he is apparently involved in the leakage of this letter.
So how do you see the timing of the publication of this report, and especially in a foreign media outlet, especially when we talk about the National Assembly being dissolved at that very particular moment?
I think so. If you recall, Imran Khan, when he was ousted from the government, he had generated a narrative of cipher, external interference, American interference, and later on he took a U-turn. He said, while talking to Voice of America, that he is initially he used to believe that Americans were involved. Later on he took the U-turn and said that no, he used to think that it was an imported conspiracy. Later on he realized that it was an conspiracy which was exported from here, and we saw that he was naming the military leaders. Then we saw that he named Mr. Hussain Haqqani. Then we saw that he named the Chief Minister of Punjab, Mr. Mohsin Naqvi, as the conspirator of those conspirators who removed his government.
Right, Mr. Azaz, one more thing. Both of our participants already agreed that when this particular media outlet goes on to mention an anonymous source in the Pakistan military, which both of our participants agree that it's an attempt to create a division within the armed forces of Pakistan. So is there any mechanism Pakistani authorities can take this matter up with the US authorities for the publication of such authenticated report over there?
Well, I think so that Pakistani Foreign Office could give a statement. I don't know whether they would give the statement or not. We have seen the statement of the U.S. State Department. They are denying that they were involved in removing the government of Mr. Imran Khan, and we see the lack of version of even PTI. You know, if you try to interview Mr. Shah Mahmood Qureshi, the then foreign minister, he would also he would not admit the the contents of this report for obvious reasons. So I think so. The authentic or unauthentic, that's a separate matter. If you talk about America, you know that they have different laws, and they have the First Amendment law, which apparently protects the stories. But this doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that every story which is published over there is correct. If this is incorrect, and if some stakeholder is damaged, you can sue them in the court. But this doesn't, this just doesn't justify the whole scenario. The actual whole scenario is this, that Imran Khan is being alleged by the FIA that one copy of the Cipher was misplaced, misused, and now we have seen the result that the copies are surfacing from America.
Mr. Azaz, Syed, senior journalist, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Brigadier Masud, now, should we be tracing back the leak and this particular media organization getting hold of this copy of Cipher to where it went missing from?
Certainly. The big question is who leaked it. If at all they are in possession of a so-called copy of Cipher, then there's a serious breach of Official Secret Act. So there is a requirement of an inquiry, then an investigation, and that may be carried out in close coordination with the United States. But the culprits, whosoever they are involved in leaking this copy, they should be taken to task. There is no other option.
So what are the legal measures that ideally are taken under the Official Secret Act?
Certainly, Official Secret Act says if you share some information, it clearly says if you share some information, even with any media outlet, then you are liable to be tried by military law. That is Official Secret Act. So it is precisely, the things are very clear, and any individual who is involved in it and who has leaked it, whosoever he is, the action can be taken as per the Official Secret Act.
Right, Mr. Aniq, Zafar. So Official Secret Act, if the identification is done where this particular copy of the Cipher was leaked from, what the Official Secret Act say regarding taking the measure?
I am not very familiar with the Official Secret Acts and how what kind of punishment or reprimand can be attracted by such leakage. But one thing is very certain, that once such a document is leaked and it violates Official Secret Act, there must be some action, and it should be reciprocal to the severity of the issue. And here the issue is, there are two fundamental issues. One, trying to create divisions in the society through divisions in the institutions through this leak, and second, such leaks have an impact on Pakistan's foreign policy and Pakistan's interests. So whosoever has leaked it will have to face face the law, because until unless you take measures to counter such blatant irresponsibility, you will have to contend with other leaks as well if you do not take action now.
Mr. Aniq, Zafar, political analyst, thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. And also Brigadier Retired Masud Ahmad Khan, senior analyst, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's show. Thank you for watching.